Hi, this is Phoenix, and usually I talk about philosophy or I read from my work, but today I'm going to talk about my failures and successes with helping the homeless. Um, I'm going to do this because this is all in preparation for a book that I'm writing right now about homelessness. It's called The Crumbling Mansions, and by the time I'm finished describing my mostly failures, but also a few successes, you'll kind of understand why I'm writing this book and why it's crucial and why it's an appropriate conclusion. So I want to describe some incidences that I've had. One of them, this is pretty much what kickstarted everything and has brought me to the point that I'm at today. There was a time where I was helping some kids learn how to read at this certain facility for homeless people. And I was teaching the kids how to read. I was there for 3 weeks. And then suddenly they tell me that I can't come back. And I can't come back until I've done their it's like an orientation. So they said I can't come back until I do their orientation, and I didn't know about this because I'd never gotten their email, but they were still going to hold that against me and say that I couldn't go back. So I tried to explain that I had school and that I couldn't do it, but pretty much that didn't matter to them, and they told me that I couldn't go. And that was really crushing because I had started to make some connections with the people there that I was helping, even though it had only been 3 weeks, and I felt that I was doing a really good thing. And I just didn't understand why they didn't want me involved anymore. So a few months pass, and I'm finally able to go to the orientation. So I go, and after about a week, I wait, and suddenly I get a reply, and they tell me, these were pretty much their words, that I'm unfit for their program, without telling me why, without giving me any inclination of why. Now, this piece is definitely going to go in my book, The Crumbling Mansions. In fact, it's going to be called Bad Beginnings, and it's basically going to be about my experiences with just going through this rejection and this feeling and just not understanding like what it was I was doing wrong, why they were treating me so indifferently and even cruelly in many ways. And most importantly, how they were preventing me from making a difference and just how hurtful all of that was. And that happened probably about 3 years ago. And I still remember it like it was yesterday, still a very painful incident that still really weighs down on me. Now, I also work with the homeless as well, and was working with the homeless as all of this was going on, just on the streets. And I had several run-ins with homeless people. I remember I had one run-in with one homeless person who was I could tell he was very miserable, he was in pain. And I was trying to help him, and I wanted to buy him some food. And so I just tried striking up a conversation with him, and he finally freaked out, and I told him I was going to give him a space, that if he wanted me to go, I would go, or whatever. And he just was very indifferent and very calloused, in fact, to me being there. And so but I continued to talk with him, and finally he got so frustrated with me that he pretty much told me to leave in his own way, that he just wanted to hold up the sign. And that was a really crushing experience because it was like I was trying to help him, and yet he was being mean. And as a side note, this actually makes sense in a book I'm reading where they describe how essentially people that are homeless only want their basic needs, they don't want relationships, which makes sense. But even still, I wanted to provide this guy some basic needs such as food, but apparently even that wasn't his need. His need was just holding up a sign. Not that I'm stereotyping or generalizing, but that was what he wanted to do. There was another experience where this guy freaked out at me when I told him, just try to hang in there because I didn't know what else to say. And he was basically like, well, this is what I get sick of, is I have people like you tell me to just pretty much get over it. That was pretty much his attitude. And I was like, no, I'm not saying get over it, and I'm not trying to be mean, and I'm not coming from a place of like condescension. I'm just trying to encourage you. But he was just really hostile towards me, and it was pretty discouraging. So as you can tell, those are very blatant instances of failures with the homeless themselves, but also with organizations which are there to help people. And you can imagine how crushing all of this would be. But apparently it gets worse. So I was once helping this one homeless person, and he was a refugee, and I got him some tea from Starbucks, and we were just sitting outside Cafe Rio, and suddenly the manager comes out and starts yelling at us and says that she's going to call the police, and she assumes that I'm homeless because I have a backpack. And so to make a long story short, she scared the poor guy away, and I wasn't able to help the guy, and all of that was really discouraging. And it pretty much said a lot about the way we treat homeless people, and like how I was categorized as being homeless even though I wasn't, and how I wasn't able to ultimately help the guy. Now, as all of this has been going on, as all of this had been going on, and I'd been thinking about it, years were passing. I was getting more experience with helping the homeless. Some successes, many failures, though, for the most part. I decided that in terms of organizations, I needed to try a different approach. And the different approach was basically promoting myself as a business person, as a freelance writer, as a professional writer. Because by then I had books published, and I wanted to present myself that way. And I figured if I presented myself in a very professional manner, it would be a lot harder to turn me away. So I decided that I was going to do a reading at Palmer Court. So we advertised and we did everything, and then I went and showed up, and guess what happened? Nobody showed up. So naturally, this time I had the support of the organization, but I had no support from the actual people. In fact, from what I could tell, they weren't even interested in me being there. They weren't interested at all. In fact, when people tried to round them up the second time that I went, people just didn't want to go. Maybe it was the first time, I can't even remember now. But tried to get people, and they just weren't interested in going. And you can imagine how discouraging that was, because I wanted to share my writing and my work for them to inspire them. But then 2 times nobody shows up, because after the first time when nobody showed up, we decided to try it again. Nobody showed up again. And so by this point, the message was pretty clear. And for someone who was trying a different approach, you can imagine why that would be crushing, because the first time the organization didn't want me, but the people needed me. This time it was the opposite, where the organization didn't mind having me, but then the people didn't need me. So I was like, when am I going to get this right? So I continue to try to synthesize all of this information, continue to try to think about it, and in the meantime, I continue to interact with the homeless. And so I finally decided, okay, if I can't share my reading, then maybe, or my work, then maybe I can at least freelance my writing. So I approached many organizations that are in the Valley, some that even had to do with mental health, but mostly homeless organizations. And I dropped off my business card and I gave that to them in an attempt to try to freelance. And to make a long story short, none of them responded. But through persistence on my part, I was able to be persistent with 2 other organizations. I won't share their names, but one for adults, a homeless shelter for adults, and then another homeless shelter for street youth. And both of them ultimately decided that I was that they really pretty much didn't want to solicit my work. That even though I had tried this new approach of freelancing, they didn't want to solicit it. In fact, the first one just said blatantly, we have no use for your skills. And the second one pretty much just told me flat out that I can't write for them. So you can imagine how discouraging that was, how there was no luck. But a little bit before, I'm going to backtrack a little bit before all of this happened with the freelancing, I started doing, and so this is the successes too, by the way, I started doing speeches with my writing at places. So one place where I did it was the city council. Another place I did it was at the Homeless Commission, which is a commission that's there to try to help homelessness and help homeless people off the streets. And so I gave speeches, and so, I mean, it's a success. It's a failure in a sense, because I don't know exactly what the speeches did, if they accomplished anything, but it's at least using my rhetoric and what I know about this sensitive issue to try to help the situation. And so I guess that could be a success. But anyway, for the most part, you can see, and this only scratches the surface of everything that I've experienced, but you can see that how could anybody continue to want to help the homeless when they've been through this much rejection, when they've been run through the ringer this much and literally gotten nowhere? Why would they want to help? I mean, helping the homeless is a very complicated social issue, as illustrated by the whole incident with Cafe Rio. Just associating with the homeless is a bad thing according to our society, which is really, really sad. And there's all of these implications and social ramifications from helping the homeless. There's sometimes, I admit, I feel almost a sense of shame when I want to help homeless people, not because I feel shame helping the homeless people themselves, but because I can see the shame projected on them from society. And it's just like, wow, like, how am I even dealing with this right now? And it's very, very discouraging and very, very disheartening to see all of that. So, I should have probably given up, right? I mean, essentially I should have given up, but I didn't. And I didn't give up because suddenly, with the help of some people, I was able to come up with a conclusion of what I wanted to do. And what I decided that I was going to do is I'm going to write a nonfiction book with short pieces, some philosophy pieces, and some pieces just detailing the various stories of people who are homeless that I talk to and that I experience, that I talk to and that I'm with in my various experiences. And essentially, I'm going to make a book, and the book, like I said, is called The Crumbling Mansions, and I'm going to publish this book, and I'm going to try to circulate this book to let people know what it's like. And I've written about homelessness in the past in various pieces of mine. My poetry book, The Street Poetic, is dedicated to homelessness and to homeless people. In fact, my vision is to give the homeless people a copy of the book and just let them have it and just let them know that they're not alone. I have two homeless street kids, who are the protagonists in my novel Exhaustion. And my novel The Street Kid filters my experiences through the character Phoenix, who is a homeless kid himself. And I also wrote two plays, actually, that also deal with homeless street kids and the like. And so I've definitely done a lot of that. And so it's come in my writing, but in this book, I definitely want to be able to circulate these pieces and to be able to get them out there, because I feel like the best way that I can make a difference is through my writing. And I think that outreach is important, but I think that because I can communicate through writing, and because I have various mediums to be able to communicate that information, I think that it's a good way to try to circulate the information and the things that I learn. So all in all, as you can tell, I did not give up. I came up with a valid conclusion of what I needed to do with all of these really, really discouraging experiences, and that is write a book. And sure, it may not be the perfect route. There's still a lot of things that I wish could have happened. I am personally amazed at all of the resistance that I've faced, all of the judgment, all of the even the degradation of my soul that I've experienced from all of the shame and stigma surrounding what it is that I'm doing, and just the cold rejections from organizations, more than one organization. All of that is just amazingly discouraging. But I stick with it nonetheless, because I think that if you have a passion for something and a passion for people, and you have this desire to be compassionate towards other people, then you should follow it to its logical conclusion. And the best way that I can see myself making a difference is through writing. And as you can tell, obviously this wasn't easy. This came from all of these experiences, which have brought me to this point of writing this book and realizing that this is the best way to help. Essentially what I had to do was synthesize all of these experiences and refine all of my emotions and everything that I had experienced into something useful, into a product. So essentially it's kind of the metaphor of whenever you have to burn coal to get the diamond. I think that's the metaphor. Or whenever you have to, or the metaphor of the phoenix, to use my name, where the phoenix has to essentially rise from the ashes in a very painful way to be able to be a beautiful bird of flame. And so essentially it's kind of the same thing with this book, that it came through a lot of pressure. Yeah, so you don't burn the coal, you put pressure to the coal. I don't know how it works, but you get the idea, that basically all of this pressure and all of this resistance has actually led to something that I think is going to be a very, very useful distillation of my skills, of my experiences, and my abilities as a human being to be able to essentially bring light to this phenomenon of homelessness. And I'm not going to give up. As hard as it's been, I'm not going to give up, and I'm really hoping for the best. And so I'm trying not to focus on my failures, trying to see this as a success, and I'm trying to see myself as, most importantly, as someone who's trying to help the homeless. And I may have my shortcomings and things that I have definitely failed at and will continue to fail at, but I'm going to do this. Again, this is Phoenix, and thank you.